Hi everyone and welcome to the Time Wizard 2010 meta discussion. I'm Marcello Barberi and I'm joined by Tom Payne as we will go through a little bit of history and what makes this very popular format so unique and give you guys, a little bit of some tips and some heads up on how to get into this amazing Yu-Gi-Oh format. But we gotta, as mentioned, take a trip down memory lane as it all starts in 2010, of course, for what was the current YCS, is formerly known as Shonen Jump Championship in Edison, where this format took place, and Jeff Jones, one of the most accomplished Yu-Gi-Oh players of all time, took the event by storm with his Plant Synchro deck, facing off against Gadget in the finals in a very amazing battle. But a lot has changed since then, and obviously the beauty of Time Wizard is that it keeps on adapting, and our duelists find new ways to just, take a look at the pool of cards that were legal back in the day and the Forbidden Limited list in effect, and just come up with new ideas on the spot. So I think, first of all, Tom, maybe you can give us a little bit of an idea of what are the most popular decks to expect when going to a Time Wizard event.
Yeah, so as mentioned, Jeff Jones won back in 2010 with Plant Synchro, but nowadays it's not so popular, and the most popular decks are arguably some Blackwing variations. So one of the most popular decks is pure Blackwing, so you play cards like Blackwing Shura the Blue Flame, and you play Black Whirlwind, the very powerful continuous spell that lets you keep searching and adding Blackwing cards from your deck to your hand. And then you back it up with like powerful trap cards like Icarus Attack, and then some of the most powerful cards that lots of other decks run, like Mirror Force and Bottomless Trap Hole and so on. So I'd say this is really a deck for people that like to play aggressively. You're kind of always on the front foot, you're damaging your opponent, you're stealing games with Kalute the Moonshadow to discard it from your hand to do extra damage and things like that. So this is really a deck for players who like a kind of aggressive play style. And then on the other hand, we have the more Vayu-centered version of Blackwings. So this centers around Vayu, the Emblem of Honor, and there are lots of ways to send it to the graveyard. So you send it to the graveyard with cards like Armageddonite and Dark Grepher, and you use its effect to banish 2 cards to summon a Blackwing Synchro monster from your extra deck. But the great thing about this Vayu version is that you get to play almost all of the most powerful cards that the format has to offer. So very popular cards in the format are cards like Super Nimble Mega Hamster to summon a copy of Raikou Lightsworn Hunter from your deck, and then you can play cards like, you can tribute those for Caius the Shadow Monarch, and you can play cards like Plague Spreader Zombie to send with Armageddon Knight. And of course, with all these powerful dark monsters, you can play the biggest boss monster in all of the format, arguably, is the Dark Armed Dragon. Not only that, you can play some of those powerful traps in the format with this deck. So really picking up right now is Deck Devastation Virus to kind of sneak up on all those decks that run a lot of small monsters. You can tribute any of your big Blackwing monsters to activate it, or you could play Royal Oppression.
Yeah, and I think, as you've mentioned, also a beauty of Time Wizard in general is that you get the chance to play with some of those forbidden cards that you can no longer use, and Royal Oppression is one of them. Trap Dashwood is another big trap card that is no longer available, but gives you so much advantage, I feel like, in terms of knowledge as well. And those cards are being played by the Blackwing deck. And I gotta say, I've played quite a bit of this format, and this turbo version of Blackwing has been my go-to deck. But as the format progresses, I gotta say, as of lately, I am levitating towards Substitute and Frog decks. And what a card Substitute was, talking of cards that have been forbidden for a long time. Actually, funny enough, back in 2010, and especially this Time Wizard format wasn't the longest, because soon afterwards we would get a new set in which cards such as Ronin Toadin would be released, and then we would see Frog FTK actually rise and take by storm both the European Championship and the World Championship with Galileo, which is one of the greatest of all times, getting I think first, second, and third, which is crazy. But this meant that I think in 2010, specifically for that time period, probably there was a lot of underestimating Substitute. But I think the card is by far, alongside the Blackwing decks, the best card of the format. It does so much on its own since it's not once per turn, and a big difference for anyone who's not familiar is also the concept of priority. Essentially, back in the day, once you have initial priority, it means that when you summon a monster, usually you get to activate the effect right away only if it's stated. So like Armageddon Knight or Elemental Hero Stratos, they clearly say when this card is normal summon, you can use the effect. Back in the day, or at least for this format, anytime you would summon a monster, you get the chance to activate one of your, we could say, effect monsters, whether it's already on the field or also cheekily enough, even in the graveyard, if you have like a Plague Spreader or a Malicious, you can get the chance to activate the effect as Chainlink 1 before your opponent can respond with cards such as, Bottomless, Torrential, and so on. And this makes Substitute so much better because you can use it right away and then you can keep on using it. And this has enabled a lot of decks. Frog Monarch is obviously a all-time favorite for a lot of duelists, alongside Caius, Raidzine, all the Monarchs. I think as of lately, our duelists have been exploring a lot of combo decks, which I think you're also in general a fan of, and cards that would get popular later on that summer, such as Fishburg Blaster, I think are still unexplored in the format. And you can do so much with cards such as Death Frog, which is always funny to me. And Pot of Favor is not limited, it's unlimited. You can play 3 copies of it in 2010. And this means that whenever you have a Substitute, you can just keep on flowing your graveyard with frogs and then just getting plus with Salvage and Pot of Avarice. And I think these decks really are taking the format by storm. I've been playing, such a frog turbo deck, we could say, as of lately, and I'm having a lot of fun. If you have missed some of the content, we also shooted a video back in YCS Bologna where we highlighted some of these frog combos that you can do in 2010, so you can go and check that out. But talking still about more explosive decks, I think you are the expert here.
Yeah, I mean, speaking of fun decks, there's nothing more fun to a lot of players than the Lightsworn deck.
Yes.
You get to send a lot of cards from the top of your deck to the graveyard. All of the Lightsworn monsters do that during the end phase, and then they have some extremely powerful spells like Solar Recharge and Charge of the Light Brigade, which let you send cards from the top of your deck to the graveyard straight away. So these cards are super popular to the extent they're being sort of splashed in almost everything. You're seeing a lot of decks running Raikou, for example, and Charge of the Light Brigade. But you can play it in a pure Lightsworn deck itself, and that gives you access to some of the more powerful Lightsworn boss monsters. So I mentioned Dark Arm Dragon before, but arguably even more powerful, though you don't see it quite as much because you have to play Lightsworns to play it, is Judgment Dragon. You can special summon it if you've got 4 Lightsworn monsters in your grave, and then pay 1,000 to destroy all the other cards on the field. So this is just absolutely insane. It's an absolute powerhouse of the format. But Lightsworn itself is very flexible because sending cards from your deck to the graveyard is something a lot of strategies want to achieve. So, like you said, Pot of Avarice is an excellent payoff for that, but some players like to run cards like, well, obviously Wolf Lightsworn Beast, but you can run the Christia to take advantage of sending fairies, or you can run some Chaos monsters. You can run cards like Plague Spreader Zombie or Dark Arm Dragon again. So, Lightsworn, very flexible, very powerful, and very explosive deck.
Yeah, and it's definitely up there, and it's always nice for me also when decks kind of come back into modern Yu-Gi-Oh! As we have had recently support for the Lightsworn deck, and it's nice to then maybe have players who don't know the original Lightsworn deck. They have been playing with the new cards, but they get a chance to go back and just see how the deck was back in the day. And for sure, Lightsworn was one of the decks back in 2010 where, differently from the others, came as a favorite, because in 2009 especially it was dominating, and then the latest Forbidden Limited list kind of like limited a lot of pieces, but it's still very good. But as we've mentioned, the winner of the main event for that format was Synchro Plants. Again, if you guys want, we recreated the finals for that event where me and Alberto played the decks, and you can go and check that out on our official pages. But I think it's time that we talk about plants in general, and Lone Fire Blossom always has been the key card. We have seen Rika as of lately dominate a lot of events here in Europe, and I gotta say, back in the day, again, it was mostly played as a synchro deck with cards such as Quick Throw Synchron, and then obviously Dandelion, and you would focus on Drill Warrior and just summoning your synchro monsters. But as of lately, actually, the trend has been to use Longfire Blossom in a better way, and there have been 2 decks as of lately that have tried out these plant variants. One is focused around a card that is also forbidden nowadays, which is Amaryllis, and it has been used in the past for FTK strategies to just loop it and just keep on damaging, because whenever it is destroyed, you deal 800 damage to your opponent, and every end phase, it's not once per turn, you can banish a plant from your graveyard and bring it back from your graveyard. So it's kind of a recurring effect that can be quite annoying. And that deck is not about synchro summoning at all. You use 3 copies of Titanial as well, which is crazy, but that is because both Amaryllis and Titanials are level 8. You can play trade in and just try and get to your combo pieces, and I think it's definitely a niche pick, and it plays cards actually in a very unique way, foregoing your normal summon in a very modern Yu-Gi-Oh approach to play cards such as Hidden Armory or Miracle Fertilizer, which both require you not to take a normal summon. And as of recently and in the last couple of events, a new, yet again, version of plants have emerged with Giga Plant, and I'm really excited for it because similar to the Fishburg Frog decks, it can really get things going. Whenever you get to a Longfire plus your equip spell, so the Supervise, you can give Giga Plant, which is a Gemini monster that probably most of you might have not even heard of, which are these monsters that are considered normal monsters, but then you can normal summon 1 more time to give them an effect. If you have this equip spell Supervise, they get the effect right away, and then when the card is gone, you get to bring them back from the graveyard. So with Gigaplant and Longfire, you can get into a lot of synchro summon. Power Tool Dragon, one of the fan favorites also from the anime, gets to shine, and I think it's a deck that you all should at least take a look at and expect at future Time Wizard events.
Yeah, for sure. It's definitely a very powerful deck. But speaking of Gemini monsters, there's another very popular Gemini monster in the format, and it comes in the form of Elemental Hero Neos Alias. So heroes are a very important part of the format, I would say. So, I mean, obviously in more modern Yu-Gi-Oh! They've got very explosive, but this is a bit more of a control version, with Elemental Hero Neos Alias being a 1900 monster you can normal summon, but it has a lot of good things about it. So first of all, it's a Gemini, so you can play the very powerful interruption Gemini Spark, allowing you to tribute a Gemini monster you control. It's a quick play spell, and then target a card on the field, destroy it, and then draw a card. In addition, it's a light monster, so you can use it with Honest, and you can use it with Hero Blast to add it back from your grave to your hand and destroy a card your opponent controls. So that's kind of the hero beatdown deck, if you like. It's centered around this Neos Alias, and then you pair it up with some powerful water monsters like Deep Sea Diva, which gets you a quick synchro to access probably one of the most powerful cards in the format, and why these hero decks are so popular, which is Miracle Fusion. Miracle Fusion lets you fusion summon. It's a bit like a kind of modern fusion spell, if you like. Rather than fusioning from the deck, you can fusion from the graveyard by banishing materials, and the most powerful fusion monster people tend to summon with it is Elemental Hero Absolute Zero. It's got 2,500 attack, and when it leaves the field, no matter how, if it's banished with Caius Dimensional Prison, returned to the deck with Phoenix Wind Wing Blast, it will destroy all monsters your opponent controls, so it's very difficult for your opponent to deal with. So we've been seeing players splash this engine into a lot of different decks. We've seen it in Frogs, we've seen it in this hero beatdown deck, and also players are kind of just playing an aggressive kind of combo version of the hero deck where you use Malicious comboing with Diva to make a bunch of quick level 8s. So hero definitely a fan favorite and definitely a deck to keep your eye on.
Absolutely, and a quick trivia, what's the only way the Elemental Hero Absolute Zero does not trigger back in the day? It's very tough, I can tell you that much.
I'm going to go with it has to be face down and then return to the deck. That's it.
So you need to specifically have something like Book of Moon plus compulsory, or the Wing Blast, but it's very, very unlikely, and the card is absolutely a powerhouse. But talking of fan favorites, obviously Elemental Heroes have always been among the most loved archetypes in the entire game. But I gotta say, another one that is also receiving support as of lately is Gladiator Beast, and this is a really interesting one, probably the most peculiar one, I want to say, because if you take a look at the top decks, or for example the decks that were played and topped the event Jeff Jones won, you would see a lot of Gladiator Beasts, and especially a lot of specifically side deck cards for the deck, cards such as Mirror of Oaths, which are so niche and are only good against Gladiator Beasts. But then, when Time Wizard 2010 essentially become popular, I think Gladiator Beasts completely disappeared. They were nowhere to be seen. Maybe you would see, that one player at the local who plays the deck, but it didn't have any success. But as of 2024, especially the end of 2024, we have seen a resurgence of the deck. It topped every single Ultimate Time Wizard, whether it was in the US or in Europe. And yeah, I think the deck is absolutely back. You should take a look at it, prepare. It has, I think, also a lot of unique elements to it because it's a control deck, so you get to play a lot of trap cards, but it also has the explosiveness thanks to some of the elemental hero cards, most importantly Prisma, which can turn into, changing his name, a Gladiator Beast Bestiari, most importantly, which is limited in the format, but that thanks to the Prisma you can play up to, as many copies as you want if you want to really play emergency and reinforcement of the army. And yeah, it's definitely a deck that you all should take into account when going to the next events. But yeah, in general, I think the format has a lot to offer. It's for all of you to just check your decks. You have a lot of options available. I think, as I've mentioned right now, I'm mostly on frogs. What is your favorite go-to deck, let's say?
You're making it hard to pick. I feel like I quite like the frogs as well. One of my favorite pet decks is to run a kind of monster mash, where you use a deck with many, many monster cards, and you use the payoff cards like Gallus the Star Beast and Witch of the Black Forest. I mean, we haven't mentioned it here because it's not really on most people's radar, but it's definitely a lot of fun. So if you want to get deeper in, you could definitely try it out.
Absolutely, but I mean, as you could have guessed, the format is, and the reason why it's so popular is that there is so much to it. You can just, take a look at the card pool and the Forbidden Limited list and just honestly build whatever deck you're comfortable with. And I think they have proven that you can top or even win with it, as the Ultimate Time Wizard in Bologna was won by Machina, yet another deck. So just try out for yourself whatever decks you're comfortable with, and if you like and enjoy this 2010 Time Wizards, such as other Time Wizard formats, just download and check your Neuron app and go and check your local Time Wizard events. Thank you.